The snow fell harder than expected, covering New York streets in thick, quiet white. It was well past midnight, and the city usually awake seemed to have finally surrendered to the storm. Streetlights cast a soft orange glow through the foreign, and the wind howled between empty buildings. A sleek black Audi moved slowly on the deserted street, its tires pressing silently against the fresh snow. Inside, Ethan Morgan sat with one hand on the leather steering wheel, the other adjusting the heater settings. The world outside was a white haze, but the interior of his car remained a sanctuary of warmth and luxury. Italian leather seats, dashboard lights glowing like blue stars, classical music playing softly from hidden speakers. None of it penetrated the hollow feeling in his chest, 10 years to the day since his mother's death, and sleep remained as elusive as peace. His therapist had suggested meditation. His assistant had left sleeping pills on his desk with a concerned look. The board members had pretended not to notice the dark circles under his eyes during yesterday's meeting. None of them understood that sometimes the quiet was too loud to bear within the walls of his penthouse. As he turned onto Lexington Avenue, something caught his eye through the curtain of snow. A figure huddled at the bus stop. He narrowed his gaze, slowing the car to a gentle stop. There, curled up on the cold metal bench, was a young woman in scrubs. Her blonde hair was wet with snow, her shoulders shaking in a thin jacket. She sat rigidly, hands tucked into her pockets, staring ahead. A phone lay dead on her lap. Ethan's forehead creased. Without thinking, he parked the car with practiced efficiency and stepped out. The cold hit him immediately, piercing through his wool coat, but he barely registered it. He walked toward her with measured steps, the snow muffling the sound of his Italian shoes. She didn't look up until he spoke. "You're coming with me." Her head snapped toward him, eyes wide with surprise and wariness. "Excuse me, I don't even know you." He looked down at her, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm not leaving you here to freeze. That's not happening." She stood quickly, instinctively backing away a few feet. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her voice shook and her teeth chattered audibly. "I'm waiting for the next bus." "There is no next bus," he replied, glancing down the empty street. "Not tonight. Everything's shut down. No taxis, no trains, and you're wearing scrubs in a blizzard." "I can figure it out," she said firmly, wrapping her arms tighter around herself. He didn't move closer, but his gaze held something that made her unable to look away. Not pity, not desire, but something else, like quiet understanding. He removed his long black cashmere coat and held it out to her. "Put this on." She hesitated, then slowly reached for it, wrapping it around her shoulders. It was warm, smelled faintly of sandalwood and something expensive, and immediately dulled the sharp edge of cold. "I can take you home," he said simply. "Where do you live?" "Far," she replied cautiously. "Too far to walk, and no taxi would get through this." "My car is warm, and I'm not a serial killer. You can sit in the back if you prefer, and I'll take you wherever you need to go. Or you can stay out here and develop hypothermia. Your choice." She studied him for a long moment. He looked vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place why. His face had sharp, elegant lines that might grace magazine covers. Cold gray eyes, a perfectly tailored suit beneath a dark cashmere scarf, hair just beginning to glisten with snow. He looked like someone who had never waited for a bus in his life. Though every warning bell in her mind was ringing, her body moved first. Her legs carried her forward before she consciously decided. "Fine," she said softly, and he opened the passenger door. She slid in, uncertain if this was a terrible mistake, uncertain of anything except the blessed warmth that instantly enveloped her. The door closed with a soft thunk, silencing the howling wind. She watched as he walked around to the driver's side and slid in beside her, then glanced at her once before pulling away from the curb. Neither spoke as the car glided down the snowy street. Two strangers in a silent car, connected only by a chance encounter and the kindness of a man who never stopped for anyone until tonight. The soft hum of the heater filled the silence between them as the vehicle moved smoothly through streets lightly dusted with white. The windows gradually cleared, revealing the glittering city blanketed in white. Inside the car, the warmth was startling after the biting cold outside. Emma sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her hands still clutching the coat he'd given her. She pulled it tighter, inhaling the unfamiliar but pleasant scent embedded in the fabric. It smelled of money, yes, but also of something steady, calm, secure. She glanced sideways at the man driving. He hadn't spoken another word since she'd gotten in. He seemed entirely focused on the road, his profile illuminated by the dashboard lights. Everything about him was precise, his posture, his watch, even the way he held the steering wheel. "Thank you," she said quietly, more from habit than hope. He didn't look at her. "You don't need to thank me. You were freezing." She paused. Still, most people wouldn't have stopped. A slight smile touched the corner of his lips. "I'm not most people." The answer could have sounded arrogant, but somehow it didn't. It was simply true. They fell silent again, and Emma leaned back against the seat. The exhaustion hit her full force now that she was finally warm. 14 hours at the hospital without a break, understaffed, no lunch, and a code blue during her last hour. She hadn't meant to miss the last bus, but these things kept happening. Her life was a constant struggle to stay afloat. Rent was overdue. Her second job was cutting hours, and her student loan servicer called with religious regularity. He turned the car into an underground parking garage. Emma's eyes widened as they descended a private entrance with polished concrete and ambient lighting. This wasn't just any apartment building. "You live here?" she asked, surprised. "For now," he replied, bringing the car to a stop. "Come on, you're staying here tonight." She blinked. "Wait, what?" "It's not a question," he said, already stepping out of the car. "You need somewhere to sleep. I have more than enough space." Her self-preservation instinct kicked in. "I can't just stay at some stranger's place." He paused beside the open passenger door, meeting her eyes without trying to persuade or cajole. "No strings attached. I'll take the guest room. Lock your door if you want, but you're not walking back out into that storm." She bit her lip nervously, half her brain screaming, this was insane, the other half exhausted and bone-weary, thinking of that frozen bench. After a moment, she stepped out of the car. Inside, the apartment was even more impressive than she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft lighting, a flickering fireplace, and profound silence that felt almost sacred. The space was elegant but not unwelcoming. Masculine, understated. "You can take the room on the left," he said, gesturing toward a hallway. "There are clean clothes in the dresser. They'll be big on you but warm." She turned to him slowly. "Why are you doing this?" He shrugged slightly. "Because I can, and because I have a conscience." That answer stayed with her as she walked to the guest room. The bed was immaculately made. The sheets smelled of lavender and something expensive. Everything was pristine, yet it didn't feel sterile. It felt lived in but lonely, like someone who had everything but nothing that mattered. 15 minutes later, wearing an oversized gray sweater and sweatpants that hung loosely on her frame, Emma padded quietly back into the kitchen. She wanted water, but stopped short in the doorway. Her host stood at the stove cooking. Not a chef, not takeout, just him in a white t-shirt and dark pants, stirring something in a small pot. He glanced up, noticing her watching. "Thought you might be hungry." She looked surprised. "What are you making?" "With ramen," he said simply. "Nothing fancy, just warm." She stepped closer, surprised at how ordinary he seemed now. Not a wealthy stranger, just a man who, for whatever reason, had seen her and fed her. As she sat at the counter, he placed a bowl in front of her and handed her chopsticks. She stared at him, more confused than ever. This was not what she'd expected. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You're not what I expected either." Morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting soft golden patterns across the guest room. Emma woke to the smell of coffee wafting through the apartment and the unfamiliar comfort of sheets softer than any she'd ever felt. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back, the snow, the luxury car, the stranger who had made her ramen at 2 a.m. She found a note on the kitchen counter, written in elegant, sloping handwriting. "There's cab money on the table. You can leave whenever you're ready, but if you want to talk again, call me." Under it, a crisp $100 bill and a business card. Ethan Morgan, Morgan Global Investments. She stared at the name for a long minute. It sounded vaguely familiar. Magazine covers, financial blogs, some Forbes lists she'd glimpsed at a grocery checkout. So that's who he was. She took the money but left the card. 3 days passed. She didn't call. But on the fourth evening, while volunteering at a community health fair organized by the hospital, she saw him again. He stood at the back of the event hall, quiet and still among the bustling crowd of nurses, patients, and donors. No entourage, no fanfare, just him, dressed in charcoal gray, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning the room until they found her. Emma was helping an elderly homeless man into a chair for his free checkup. He had no ID, no insurance, no emergency contact, just a threadbare coat and a gentle smile. She knelt beside him, speaking softly, taking his blood pressure with the care of someone who believed every person deserved dignity, regardless of circumstances. From across the room, Ethan watched. He didn't move, didn't interrupt her, but something in his face changed. Something subtle but profound. When the line thinned and the crowd began to disperse, Emma turned and noticed him. She paused, then walked toward him. "You followed me here," she asked, partly joking, partly uncertain. "No," he said. "I fund this program every year. I just didn't expect to see you." She folded her arms. "Well, here I am." He glanced around the hall. "You volunteer after 14-hour shifts." She shrugged. "People need help. I know what it's like not to have any." He nodded quiet for a moment, then said, "My mother was a nurse. She used to bring me to places like this when I was a kid. I hated it back then, but now I think I understand." Emma tilted her head. "You never mentioned that." "There's a lot I don't mention," he replied, a small smile playing on his lips. They stood in silence for a moment. Then he said, "Come with me, just for coffee. No obligation." She hesitated again, but this time she nodded. Coffee turned into a walk. The walk turned into sitting on a bench at the edge of Central Park where the snow had melted enough to reveal the ground beneath. They didn't talk about money or careers or anything consequential. They talked about insomnia, about terrible hospital coffee, and about books they'd started and never finished. It became a pattern. Over the next few weeks, they kept running into each other. Or perhaps not accidentally, she began to wonder, but she never asked. Sometimes they would meet in the hospital cafeteria late at night. Sometimes he would send a car to bring her to a quiet spot where he was already waiting with hot chocolate or a bag of her favorite chips he'd asked once casually and remembered. They never labeled their connection. They never held hands, but it felt more authentic than anything she'd experienced. They weren't dating. They were two people learning to live fully again. One night as they sat side by side on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum, sharing a comfortable silence filled with unspoken thoughts, she looked over at him and said, "You're different from what they say about you." He turned to her, his voice low. "So are you." She smiled. "What do they say about me?" "That you're too kind." She shrugged. "It's not kindness. It's just being human." He looked at her for a long moment. "Then maybe I'm trying to find my own." She didn't respond. She just leaned back and gazed up at the stars peeking through the city haze. And for the first time in a long while, the night felt peaceful. Ethan Morgan had always been a man who valued silence. It was where he felt most himself, most at ease. Success had come early, perhaps too early. By 30, he had built and sold his first tech company, then moved to investments where his clinical precision earned him a reputation that made people either want to be him or avoid him entirely. But money had never filled the void in his life. It merely papered over the cracks. He was 12 when his mother died, cancer swift and merciless. She had been a nurse at a small community hospital, the type who stayed late with terminal patients, who brought blankets to the homeless outside the ER, who kissed her son goodnight even when she was too exhausted to stand. His father, a cold man who lived for business, hadn't known what to do with a grieving child. So he sent Ethan to boarding school and buried himself in spreadsheets. By 25, Ethan had millions. By 30, billions. But none of it made him forget his mother. In his private office, sequestered behind glass walls and mahogany, there was one photograph he never moved. A faded picture of her in her nurse's uniform, smiling at the camera as if nothing could ever go wrong. Emma Scrubs had been nearly identical. It was the first thing that caught his eye about her, even before her trembling hands or defiant voice. He never told Emma. Instead, he began to do what he did best: work silently. Through discreet legal channels, he located her outstanding student loans and paid them in full. He established a scholarship in her name at the nursing school she had once attended. No publicity, no fanfare. He noticed her hospital was struggling to maintain its community outreach program, especially during winter months. An anonymous donation arrived enough to keep it operational for the next 3 years. He was careful. He never let her see the strings he was pulling behind the scenes. To Emma, he remained just Ethan. Enigmatic, quiet, generous in small ways, but never ostentatious. She had no idea how often he rearranged his schedule just to sit in the back of a community meeting she might attend, or how he once waited in his car for hours outside her hospital during a heavy snowstorm just to make sure she made it to her night shift safely. He told himself it wasn't about control, It was about ensuring she had the freedom to keep doing what she loved. He had seen what burnout did to people like her. He had seen it in his mother's eyes toward the end. He wouldn't let Emma carry that burden, at least not alone. Some nights after one of their quiet, undeclared meetings, he would return home and walk into his office staring at the photograph of his mother. He would think of the way Emma smiled at her patients, of how fiercely she advocated for people who had nothing. "You would have liked her," he once whispered to the picture. "You were the same." But he never said those words to Emma, not yet. He was still learning how to access that part of himself. The part locked away long ago when a small boy in a black suit stood beside a coffin and stopped believing the world could be gentle. Emma was changing that with every genuine laugh, every late-night conversation over takeout containers and mismatched teacups. She was dismantling the armor he had worn for decades, but she didn't know what he was doing for her behind the scenes. He didn't do it for gratitude. He did it because something about her made the silence inside him feel less endless. And for a man like Ethan Morgan, that was everything. As January turned to February and February to March, the brutal New York winter began to soften. The city emerged from beneath layers of snow and ice trees in Central Park, showing the first hesitant buds of spring. Emma and Ethan's meetings had become a comfortable routine and existing in a space between friendship and something more, neither pushing to define what they were building. The flu season hit Metropolitan Hospital with unexpected ferocity that spring. An aggressive strain overwhelmed emergency rooms across the 5 boroughs, creating a crisis that stretched medical resources to breaking points. Staff shortages compounded the problem, leaving those who remained standing to shoulder impossible burdens. Emma found herself working back-to-back shifts as colleagues fell ill or reached their limits. Dark circles formed permanent residences beneath her eyes, and her scrubs hung looser on her frame with each passing week. She hadn't taken a proper meal break in 3 days, subsisting on protein bars and lukewarm coffee snatched between patient rounds. Her supervisor, Nurse Martinez, noticed the deterioration. "Collins, you need to take a break. You're no good to patients if you collapse." Emma tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, checking a patient's IV line. "I'm fine. We're understaffed, and these people need help." "These people need competent nurses, not martyrs," Martinez countered, but Emma had already moved to the next room, determination overriding exhaustion. By her third consecutive 12-hour shift, Emma's body began sending warning signals. Dizziness swept over her without warning. Her hands trembled slightly when administering medication. The fluorescent hospital light seemed to pulse with increasing intensity, sending slivers of pain through her temples. Still, she pushed forward, ignoring the protests of her body. In room 304, an elderly patient with pneumonia reached for Emma's hand. "You don't look well, dear. When was the last time you ate something proper?" Emma managed a tired smile. "I'll grab something after I check on Mrs. Rodriguez down the hall. Her oxygen levels have been concerning." "The young always think they're invincible," the woman murmured, her papery hand patting Emma's. "Take it from someone who's lived 86 years, the body keeps the score." Emma nodded absently and continued her rounds. 36 hours without proper sleep. Her vision occasionally tunneled at the edges, but she attributed it to fatigue nothing coffee couldn't fix. She was halfway between the supply room and the nurse's station when the floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. The corridor walls wavered like heat mirages. She reached for the wall to steady herself, but her fingers met empty air. The last thing Emma registered was the harsh fluorescent ceiling lights blurring into streaks of white before darkness claimed her. Hospital security cameras captured the moment Emma Collins crumpling to the floor, charts scattering around her like autumn leaves. 2 doctors rushed to her side, checking vitals, calling for a gurney. Within minutes, the caretaker became the patient, unconscious and pale as she was wheeled to an available room. Protocol dictated checking emergency contacts. Emma's file contained none. But word traveled quickly through hospital networks. A nurse who had witnessed Emma's collapse remembered the man who had visited before, tall, imposing, expensive suit. Nobody knew his name, but everyone recognized wealth and power when they saw it. Through whispered conversations and discreet phone calls, the information made its way to Morgan Global Investments. Ethan Morgan was midway through a board meeting when his assistant slipped into the room, placing a handwritten note beside his leather portfolio. His expression remained impassive as he read the message, but his knuckles whitened around his Mont Blanc pen. We'll need to reconvene tomorrow, he announced, closing the portfolio with deliberate precision. Something requires my immediate attention. The board members exchanged glances. Morgan never postponed meetings, market fluctuations, international crises, even his father's funeral, nothing had ever taken precedence over business obligations. Is everything all right, Ethan? The oldest board member, Richardson, leaned forward with a concern. It will be, Ethan replied, already striding toward the door. His driver had the car waiting by the time he reached the lobby. Metropolitan Hospital. Fast as you can. The journey through midtown traffic felt interminable. Ethan's mind raced through worst-case scenarios, each more devastating than the last. He'd watched his mother deteriorate in a similar hospital room, witnessed how devotion to others had ultimately destroyed her. History was repeating itself in ways that made his chest constrict painfully. When he finally re-entered Emma's room, the sight of her unconscious form triggered memories he'd spent decades suppressing. Same pale skin against stark white sheets, same IV drip, same clinical beeping of monitors, different woman-identical fear coursing through his veins. The attending physician approached, clipboard in hand. Mr. Morgan, I'm Dr. Patel. Ms. Collins is suffering from severe exhaustion, dehydration, and the early stages of malnutrition. Her body simply shut down. Will she? The words caught in his throat. She'll recover fully with proper rest and nutrition. This isn't uncommon among healthcare workers during crisis periods, unfortunately. They tend to prioritize everyone's health except their own. Ethan nodded, memories of his mother superimposing themselves over Emma's sleeping form. May I stay with her? Of course, she should regain consciousness soon. The fluids are already helping. After the doctor left, Ethan took the chair beside Emma's bed. The hospital sounds faded into background noise as he focused on her breathing, the slight rise and fall of her chest beneath the thin blanket. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, cradling it between his own, transferring warmth to her cool fingers. 2 hours passed before Emma's eyelids fluttered. Confusion clouded her expression as she oriented herself, taking in the IV, the hospital gown, the monitoring equipment. Recognition dawned when her gaze settled on Ethan, followed quickly by embarrassment. What happened? Her voice emerged as a hoarse whisper. You collapsed after 36 hours without sleep or proper nutrition. The clinical description barely masked the emotion underneath. She squinted against the overhead light. Oh, is that all? Something broke inside him then. The careful composure he maintained in boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations cracked like thin ice under pressure. His voice emerged raw, stripped of its usual control. You could have died, Emma. Do you understand that your heart could have stopped? You could have hit your head when you fell. You're killing yourself the same way boss did. He stopped abruptly, standing and pacing beside the bed. The same way as who? He turned, eyes darkened by memories. My mother. She was a nurse, remember? Always taking extra shifts, skipping meals, putting everyone else first. She collapsed during her shift one day. The difference was she had undiagnosed cardiomyopathy. Her heart stopped in the ambulance. Emma's expression softened. Ethan, I didn't know. You're working 2 jobs. You barely sleep. You skip meals. You're following the exact same path, and you think it's nothing. She flinched at his tone, but lifted her chin defiantly. I've been taking care of myself since I was 16. I know my limits. Clearly you don't, he countered, gesturing toward the hospital bed. I didn't ask you to come here, she said, voice strengthening. I didn't ask you to worry about me. Someone has to, since you obviously won't. His words hung in the air between them, sharp and revealing more than he intended. Emma's eyes filled with tears, surprising both of them. No one has worried about me in a very long time, she whispered, her voice cracking. No one shows up, no one stays. And I couldn't bear for you to see me as some charity case, some broken thing to fix. The anger drained from him as quickly as it had erupted. He moved back to her bedside, his movements cautious now, as if approaching a wounded animal. You've spent your entire life being strong for everyone else, he said, voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. You've been holding the world together with your bare hands. A tear slipped down her cheek, followed by another. Years of carefully constructed independence crumbling under the weight of his perception. He reached for her hand, again holding it firmly this time. Not anymore, he said, voice resolute but tender. From now on, you're mine to care for. The words hung between them, weighted with significance beyond their literal meaning. This wasn't about possession, but protection, not control, but connection. More tears escaped, but Emma didn't pull away. Something fundamental shifted in their relationship during that hospital stay. Ethan arranged for the best doctors, ensured she received optimal care, but more importantly, he remained present. He worked remotely from her hospital room, rescheduling meetings around her recovery timetable. When she was discharged 3 days later, he didn't ask where she wanted to go. He simply took her home, to his home. The transition happened organically without formal acknowledgement. Emma's few possessions migrated to Ethan's penthouse gradually, first a toothbrush, then clothes books, the quilt her grandmother had made before passing. Within weeks, evidence of her presence permeated the once sterile space. Colorful mugs among his monochromatic dishware, medical journals beside financial reports, a soft throw blanket perpetually draped across the sofa. They established routines without discussion. Morning coffee on the terrace when weather permitted, shared meals whenever their schedules aligned. Emma returned to work against Ethan's initial protests, but with strict limitations on consecutive hours and a promise to maintain proper nutrition. Ethan made subtle adjustments to his own schedule, ensuring he was home when she finished late shifts. But invisible boundaries remained. At night, Ethan retreated to the sofa, leaving Emma the master bedroom. They existed in intimate proximity without crossing certain lines, their connection deepening emotionally while maintaining physical distance. Neither acknowledged this arrangement verbally, as if speaking it might shatter the delicate equilibrium they'd established. Ethan expressed his feelings through actions rather than words. Emma never entered the hospital break room without finding a fresh meal. Waiting, always her favorites, always with the same note. Eat, please, Bums. When spring storms threatened, a car would mysteriously appear at the hospital entrance as her shift ended. Her student loan statements stopped arriving, the balances mysteriously paid in full, though she never mentioned this discovery to him. For Emma, who had survived so long on self-reliance, accepting care proved more challenging than giving it. Each gesture created equal measures of gratitude and discomfort, the latter diminishing incrementally as weeks passed. She began reciprocating in ways meaningful to him, organizing his chaotic schedule, ensuring the refrigerator contained more than expensive takeout containers, creating moments of normalcy he hadn't experienced since childhood. Their domesticity existed in a protective bubble until reality inevitably intruded. The financial world noticed changes in Ethan Morgan's behavior, declined. Speaking engagements rescheduled, meetings early departures from networking events. Speculation circulated through Manhattan's upper echelons, eventually reaching Morgan Global's boardroom. The board has concerns about your recent schedule changes, Richardson mentioned during their quarterly review in late April. Some members question your level of commitment. Ethan didn't look up from the report he was reviewing. My commitment to this company remains absolute. My scheduling priorities have simply evolved. It's the nature of that evolution that concerns them. There are rumors about a woman. This captured Ethan's attention. My personal life remains exactly that personal. Richardson leaned forward, lowering his voice despite the empty conference room. I defended you, Ethan. I told them how your father's single-minded focus on business destroyed his marriage and alienated his only son. I reminded them that balanced leadership creates sustainable success. Ethan's expression softened slightly. I appreciate that, Thomas. But they'll need reassurance soon. The Tokyo merger negotiations start next month. They'll expect your full attention. They'll have it, Ethan assured him, though uncertainty flickered briefly across his features. The conversation left him unsettled. For the first time in his career, Ethan faced competing priorities. The company that had defined his identity for decades versus the relationship reshaping his understanding of himself. The possibility that he might need to choose between them created an unfamiliar anxiety. Meanwhile, Emma faced scrutiny of a different nature. Hospital colleagues noticed changes: the car service, the designer coat replacing her threadbare jacket, her improved appearance despite the grueling work environment. So, Collins, when were you going to tell us about your sugar daddy? A respiratory therapist asked during a rare shared lunch break. Emma nearly choked on her salad. Excuse me. Oh, come on, the expensive gifts, the chauffeur. You've clearly upgraded your situation. My personal life isn't workplace discussion material. Emma replied coldly, gathering her belongings and leaving the break room. But the comments persisted, whispers following her through hospital corridors. The insinuations stung particularly because they reduced something meaningful to something transactional, something pure to something tawdry. These external pressures coincided with internal tensions neither Emma nor Ethan had fully addressed. Their arrangement existed in an undefined space, more than friendship, less than a conventional relationship with unspoken questions accumulating beneath the surface. The situation reached a breaking point when Emma returned from a night shift in early May to find an elegant envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, a glossy invitation to Morgan Global's annual charity gala addressed to Ethan Morgan and guest. "What's this?" she asked when Ethan emerged from his home office. "The company's annual fundraiser. I thought you might accompany me." Emma studied the invitation, noting the black-tie dress code and prestigious venue. "You want me to attend as your date publicly? Is that a problem?" "It would be our first public appearance together," she observed, running her finger along the embossed lettering. "People will make assumptions." "Let them," he replied with characteristic directness. What remained unspoken was the significance of such a step. Ethan Morgan never brought dates to corporate functions. His appearance at the annual gala with Emma would generate precisely the kind of attention he typically avoided, attention that would inevitably illuminate the ambiguous nature of their relationship. Before Emma could respond, Ethan's phone rang. His expression shifted as he checked the caller ID. "I need to take this," he said, retreating to his office. The call lasted longer than usual. When Ethan emerged, tension radiated from his posture. "Everything okay?" Emma asked. "Victoria's in town," he replied, naming his former fiancée. "She wants to meet." "Victoria?" Emma repeated, recognizing the name from business publications she'd researched after learning Ethan's identity. Victoria Blackwood, heiress to a banking fortune whose 3-year engagement to Ethan had ended abruptly before Emma met him. "Are you going to see her?" "It would be impolite to refuse," he answered, though his tone suggested reluctance. "We still share business connections." Emma nodded, ignoring the discomfort settling in her stomach. "Of course." The meeting with Victoria occurred 2 days later at an exclusive restaurant in Tribeca. Emma told herself she had no reason for concern. Ethan had given her no cause for jealousy or distrust. Yet the nagging feeling persisted, intensified by her awareness of Victoria's pedigree. Unlike Emma, Victoria inhabited Ethan's world, naturally understanding its unwritten rules and expectations. When Ethan returned that evening, his demeanor seemed unchanged, giving no indication of the meeting's content. Emma refrained from asking, unwilling to appear insecure. The unspoken questions added another layer to the growing collection of things they didn't discuss. The following week brought unexpected development. While organizing some papers in Ethan's home office, a task he'd asked for help with, Emma discovered a document that stopped her cold. A bank transfer confirmation for the exact amount of her outstanding student loans dated shortly after their first meeting. The revelation hit with the force of a physical blow. All this time, she'd attributed the loan's disappearance to some administrative error, too afraid to question her good fortune. Now the truth lay exposed in black and white. Ethan had paid her debts without mentioning it, without seeking credit or gratitude. She was still holding the paper when Ethan returned home. One look at her expression told him everything. "You paid off my student loans." Not a question, but an accusation. He didn't deny it. "Yes." "And when were you planning to tell me?" "I wasn't." The simplicity of his answer ignited something in her. "You had no right to do that without my knowledge or consent." "You needed help," he countered. "I had the means to provide it." "That wasn't your decision to make." Her voice rose. "Do you have any idea how this makes me feel? Like some charity case, some project you've taken on." "That's not." "No? Then what am I to you, Ethan? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to buy my affection or my gratitude or, God, I don't even know what." His expression hardened. "Is that really what you think of me? That I'd use money to manipulate you?" "What else should I think when you make unilateral decisions about my life without even discussing them with me? When you step in and fix things as if I'm incapable of handling my own problems? Your problems were killing you." His controlled facade cracked. "You were working yourself to exhaustion trying to pay off those loans. What was I supposed to do? Watch you destroy yourself? You were supposed to talk to me. Tears of frustration welled in her eyes. Ask me what I wanted instead of deciding for me. Treat me like an equal, not some broken thing that needs fixing. Thunder rumbled outside, a spring storm gathering force, a meteorological echo of their first meeting, now twisted into confrontation rather than rescue. I never saw you as broken, he said, voice lowering. I saw you drowning in a system designed to keep people like you underwater forever. I had the means to change that. Why wouldn't I? Because it wasn't your burden to carry, she replied, wiping angrily at her tears. Because I'm not one of your investments that you can just throw money at until it performs better. The words hung between them, revealing a fundamental disconnect in their perspectives. To Ethan, utilizing his resources to ease Emma's struggles seemed logical, even necessary. To Emma, it represented an undermining of her independence, a reminder of the imbalance between them. What do you want from me, Emma? His question emerged quietly. She stared at him, suddenly exhausted. I want to know what this is, Ethan. What are we doing? You pay my debts. You give me a place to live. You send cars and food and gifts, but you never say what you feel. You never tell me where I stand with you. His expression shuddered, that familiar wall descending. I thought my actions made that clear. Actions without words leave too much room for misinterpretation, she countered, especially when those actions include financial transactions. He flinched as if struck. Is that how you see everything I've done, as transactions? How else can I interpret it when you won't tell me what's in your heart? Her voice softened. When you pull away, every time we get close to something real, the storm outside, intensified rain lashing against the penthouse windows. Inside, silence stretched between them, pregnant with unspoken emotions. Finally, Ethan spoke. I care about you. You know that. Caring isn't enough, not anymore. Emma's voice trembled slightly. Not when I'm falling in love with you. The admission hung in the air, vulnerable and exposed. Ethan's expression shifted through multiple emotions, surprise, fear, something like longing before settling into careful neutrality. His silence provided the answer her heart feared most. I see, she whispered, gathering the scattered papers into a neat stack. Thank you for clarifying where we stand. She moved toward the door, but his voice stopped her. Emma, wait, He struggled visibly, the words refusing to form. It's okay, she said, though it clearly wasn't. Some people aren't built for certain kinds of emotional expression. I understand that. I just can't keep living in this limbo, wondering if someday you might. She didn't finish the thought. Didn't need to. The following days passed in tense politeness. They operated around each other with careful distance, the easy rhythm of their shared life disrupted by unresolved emotions. Emma worked additional shifts, spending minimal time at the penthouse. Ethan buried himself in preparations for the Tokyo merger. Their fragile detente might have continued indefinitely if not for Victoria's unexpected appearance at the penthouse one evening while Ethan attended a late meeting. Emma answered the door to find a striking woman with impeccable styling and calculating eyes. You must be the nurse, Victoria said, appraising Emma with a dismissive glance. I thought we should meet woman to woman. Emma maintained her composure despite the intrusion. This isn't a good time. It never is when uncomfortable truths need addressing. Victoria moved past Emma into the apartment, surveying the space with proprietary familiarity. He's changed the artwork. Interesting choices. Emma crossed her arms. What do you want Ms. Blackwood? To save you from wasting your time, Victoria replied, turning to face her. Ethan and I have history, complicated, unresolved history. We come from the same world, understand the same pressures. When the Tokyo merger finalizes, the board will push for a solid leadership image. Marriage, family stability. These things matter in our circles. If you have something to discuss with Ethan, you should speak with him directly. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. You're not the first, you know. Ethan has a pattern, finding wounded birds, nursing them back to health. His mother complex manifesting in predictable ways. The words struck with precision, hitting vulnerabilities Emma hadn't acknowledged even to herself. I think you should leave. He'll never love you, Victoria continued, ignoring the request. Not the way you want. He's emotionally stunted, brilliant with numbers, hopeless with feelings. Ask yourself why he's never said those three little words you're waiting for. Emma maintained her exterior calm through sheer force of will. Our relationship isn't your concern. Relationship, Victoria laughed softly. Oh, honey, you're his latest charity project, nothing more. Why do you think he paid your student loans? The same reason he donates to those community clinics assuaging guilt about his mother. You're a living memorial to her, not a partner. The accusation resonated with Emma's deepest insecurities, but she refused to show it. I won't discuss this with you. Please leave before I call security. Victoria gathered her designer purse. Think about what I've said. You seem intelligent enough to recognize truth when you hear it, even when it's painful. After Victoria's departure, Emma remained motionless in the living room, her words echoing painfully. The doubt they planted took root, feeding on existing uncertainties. What if Victoria was right? What if Emma represented nothing more than a surrogate for Ethan's guilt about his mother? When Ethan returned later that evening, Emma had composed herself, but questions burned beneath her calm exterior. She watched him loosen his tie, cataloging the familiar movements with new perspective. Victoria stopped by, she said quietly. His movement stilled. What did she want? To enlighten me about your philanthropic tendencies toward healthcare workers. Understanding dawned in his expression. Whatever she told you, she suggested I'm essentially a living memorial to your mother. Empayero, Emma interrupted, that you're helping me out of guilt, not genuine feeling. Ethan's jaw tightened. Victoria has always excelled at weaponizing personal information. Is she wrong? The question hung between them, demanding truth after months of evasion. Ethan moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. My mother's uniform, he finally said. That first night at the bus stop, you were wearing scrubs similar to hers. That's what initially caught my attention. The confirmation sent a wave of cold through Emma's chest. So it's true. No, he turned back toward her. That's what made me notice you. It's not why I kept coming back. Then why did you... Her voice remained steady despite her turmoil. Why pay my loans? Why create nursing scholarships in my name without telling me? Why all of it, Ethan? His eyes widened slightly. How did you know about the scholarships? Hospital administration approached me last week, wanting me to speak at the award ceremony. Imagine my surprise discovering I was apparently the inspiration for a program I knew nothing about. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomfort. I should have told you. Yes, you should have. Just like you should have told me about the loans and the anonymous donation to the community outreach program and all the other things you've been orchestrating behind the scenes. I was trying to help, he said, frustration evident. No, you were trying to control, she countered, to fix everything around me without addressing what's really broken between us. Nothing's broken. Everything's broken. The force of her emotions surprised them both. We live together, but we might as well be strangers. You care for me, but won't touch me. You reshape my life from the shadows, but can't tell me how you feel to my face. She moved closer, challenging him with her proximity. What are you so afraid of? Something vulnerable flashed across his features before disappearing behind familiar walls. I'm not afraid. Then look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me, she challenged. Tell me Victoria's right, that I'm just some project, some stand-in for your mother. His silence spoke volumes. I love you, Ethan, she said, voice breaking slightly. I think I have for months now, but I can't keep loving someone who won't let me see their heart. The moment stretched between them, balanced on a knife edge of possibility. Emma waited, hoping against hope that he would finally bridge the emotional distance between them. Seconds passed. His expression remained guarded, his lips sealed against the words she longed to hear. Understanding washed over her like cold rain. That's what I thought. She turned away, retreating to the bedroom they'd never shared. When she emerged 30 minutes later, she carried a small suitcase. What are you doing? Alarm tinged his voice. What I should have done weeks ago, she replied, calm, despite the tears threatening. I can't keep waiting for a man who can't decide if he's capable of feeling. I deserve more than half a life with someone afraid of their own heart. He stood in the hallway, one hand braced against the wall, watching her gather the last of her essentials. His body language screamed conflict, the desire to stop her warring with emotional paralysis. Emma? He managed her name, emerging strangled. but whatever he intended remained locked inside him, a prisoner of decades-old defense mechanisms. She paused at the door, offering one final chance. Give me a reason to stay. His silence provided the answer. She nodded once, understanding completely. Goodbye, Ethan. The door closed with quiet finality behind her, leaving him alone in the pristine apartment that had briefly known warmth. The silence she left behind crushed him with its weight. Days blurred into weeks, time marked only by the growing evidence of Emma's absence. Her teacup remained unwashed in the sink. Her blanket lay undisturbed on the sofa. The scent of her shampoo gradually faded from the bathroom. Ethan moved through his spaces like a ghost, mechanically fulfilling professional obligations while personal emptiness expanded within him. Board meetings passed in blurs of financial jargon he processed automatically. His assistant fielded concerned calls from associates noting his uncharacteristic distraction. The Tokyo merger negotiations, once his highest priority, received delegated attention while he stared out office windows, seeing nothing. A month after Emma's departure, his executive assistant knocked tentatively on his office door. Mr. Morgan, the Tokyo board is requesting your personal presence for the final negotiations next week. Ethan stared at the photograph on his desk, Emma laughing in Central Park sunlight catching in her hair. Beside it, his mother's picture seemed to watch him with knowing eyes. Cancel it, he said abruptly. His assistant blinked in confusion. Sir, this merger has been in development for 18 months. Your presence is contractually expected. I said cancel it. His tone left no room for discussion. Rising from his desk, he grabbed his coat and left the building without explanation, ignoring the startled expressions of employees he passed. His driver waited at the curb, opening the door as Ethan approached. Metropolitan Hospital. He instructed, his decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. Evening shadows lengthened across the city as the car navigated rush-hour traffic. Light spring rain fell delicate drops illuminated by streetlights. Ethan stared through the window, memories of another night, their first meeting, playing through his mind. The hospital lobby buzzed with typical activity patients, waiting staff moving purposefully, the organized chaos of urban healthcare. Ethan approached the information desk, sudden uncertainty tempering his determination. I'm looking for Emma Collins, he said. She's a nurse here. The receptionist checked the computer system. I'm sorry, but Emma Collins transferred to our upstate facility about a month ago. The news struck him physically. Transferred? Did she leave any contact information? I'm afraid that's confidential, sir. Are you family? He hesitated, the question highlighting everything he'd lost. No, he admitted quietly. I'm not. Stepping back into the rainy evening, Ethan felt something break free inside him, some final restraint giving way. He walked into the hospital courtyard and stopped amid spring flowers and empty benches. Raindrops caught in his eyelashes, mingling with the warmth of unexpected tears. He lifted his face to the darkening sky, years of carefully maintained control dissolving. She was the only thing, he whispered, voice raw with emotion he'd denied too long, that made me human. Around him, the rain continued falling, indifferent to his epiphany, too little too late. Victoria found him in his office the following morning, reviewing personnel files from Metropolitan satellite facilities. She entered without knocking, radiating elegant irritation. You're ignoring my calls, she observed, settling uninvited into the chair opposite his desk. Ethan didn't look up from the documents. I'm busy. Looking for your nurse. Really, Ethan, this has become embarrassing. His gaze lifted, then cold and precise. What do you want, Victoria? To salvage what remains of your professional reputation, she replied. The board is questioning your commitment. Rumors are circulating about emotional instability. This isn't like you. Perhaps it's exactly like me, he countered. Perhaps this is who I've always been beneath the performance you all expected. Victoria studied him with narrowed eyes. You've changed. No, he said, returning to the files. I've remembered. Remembered what? What matters? He closed the folder decisively. Thank you for your concern, but my priorities have realigned permanently. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a hospital director to call. Her perfectly manicured hands slammed down on the folder. Stop this, Ethan. You're throwing away everything we've worked for. The board won't tolerate this behavior indefinitely. Then perhaps it's time for new leadership, he replied evenly. My controlling interest ensures I can make that decision whenever necessary. Understanding dawned in her expression. You're serious about this, about her. More than I've ever been about anything. No hesitation, no doubt, only clarity where confusion had reigned. Victoria stood smoothing her designer skirt with practiced composure. She won't make you happy, you know. She's from a different world. For the first time in their conversation, Ethan smiled a genuine expression that transformed his features. That's precisely why she did. After Victoria's departure, Ethan continued his methodical search. Hospital administrators proved resistant to sharing employee information, even with substantial donations offered. Emma had effectively vanished, leaving no forwarding address, no social media presence, no trail for him to follow. As weeks passed with no progress, Ethan confronted the possibility that perhaps this was her choice to disappear completely from his life. Perhaps respect meant accepting her decision, however painful. The thought crystallized one evening in late June as he stood in his office staring at the two photographs that had witnessed his transformation, his mother in her nurse's uniform and Emma laughing in the park. Different women from different eras, both showing him paths to humanity he'd neglected. I understand now, he whispered to his mother's image. What you tried to teach me before you left. What Emma reminded me. That caring deeply meant risking everything. That walls built for protection became prisons. That some treasures once lost might never be recovered. But at least he could honor what they'd taught him. The following day, Ethan Morgan shocked the financial world by announcing a substantial restructuring of Morgan Global Investments, establishing a healthcare division focused specifically on medical worker support programs. The press release detailed initiatives for nurse debt forgiveness, subsidized housing near hospitals, and mental health services for healthcare professionals. When questioned about this unexpected direction, Ethan provided a quote that appeared in financial publications nationwide. Some debts can never be repaid with money alone. This is my attempt to acknowledge what truly matters. Industry analysts debated the business strategy behind the move. Board members questioned its profit potential. But for the first time in his career, Ethan Morgan made decisions without calculating returns, guided instead by what Emma would have approved, what his mother would have understood. If he couldn't find Emma to tell her what he'd finally realized, he could at least build something that spoke it in a language she would recognize. Weeks turned to months. Spring surrendered to summer, then autumn. Ethan maintained his search discreetly while transforming both his company and himself. The man who once prioritized profit margins now attended hospital board meetings lobbying for improved staff conditions. The executive who had delegated charitable giving now personally visited community clinics listening to healthcare workers' concerns. Regular therapy sessions, initially undertaken as a desperate attempt to understand his emotional paralysis, evolved into genuine tools for growth. Week by week, he excavated the tangled roots of his inability to articulate feelings. His father's emotional absence following his mother's death. The boarding school that prized stoicism above all else. The business world that rewarded calculated detachment. You've made remarkable progress, his therapist noted, during a particularly breakthrough session in September. You're connecting with emotions that have been inaccessible for decades. Ethan stared out the office window, watching clouds cast shifting shadows across the cityscape. What good is progress if the person who inspired it isn't here to witness it? The question assumes your growth only matters in relation to her, the therapist observed. Is that truly what you believe? The inquiry lingered with him, challenging his perception of his own journey. Had he changed solely to win Emma back? Or had her absence catalyzed something authentic within him? Something that would remain valuable regardless of reconciliation? His answer came unexpectedly. One crisp autumn morning, as he visited his mother's grave, a ritual he had avoided for years but now performed monthly. Kneeling before the simple headstone, he cleared fallen leaves and placed fresh flowers in the small vase. I understand now, Emma, he said quietly, tracing her engraved name. What you tried to teach me in all those years. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That genuine connection requires risk. Wind rustled through nearby trees, sending a shower of golden leaves spiraling downward. I lost her because I couldn't say what I felt, he continued. But I'm learning, Mom. I'm trying to become someone worthy of a second chance, not just for her, but for myself, for you. For the first time since childhood, Ethan allowed himself to cry at his mother's grave. Not the solitary tears that had escaped when Emma left, but genuine body-shaking sobs that released decades of suppressed grief. The emotional dam broke completely, washing away layers of protective numbness. When he finally rose, something fundamental had shifted within him. The changes he'd implemented weren't strategic maneuvers to reclaim what he'd lost, but authentic expressions of who he wanted to be, who he perhaps had always been beneath accumulated armor. That realization brought unexpected peace amid continued longing. If Emma gave him another chance, he would embrace it with newfound emotional courage. If she didn't, he would respect her decision while continuing the path of growth she had helped him discover. Through it all, he continued searching, not actively pursuing now, but remaining alert for any sign, any connection that might lead back to her. Hope dimmed gradually with passing time, but never extinguished completely. As leaves turned gold across Central Park, Ethan received an unexpected call from Metropolitan Hospital's director. "Mr. Morgan, I thought you'd want to know. Emma Collins has requested a transfer back to our main facility. She starts next week." His heart stuttered in his chest. "Thank you for letting me know. Given your foundation's support of our staff wellness programs, it seemed appropriate to inform you," the director continued, "especially since the scholarship program bears her name." After ending the call, Ethan stood at his office window watching the city transition from day to evening. Emma was returning. The knowledge filled him with equal measures of hope and apprehension. She had left because he couldn't express what she needed to hear. Had anything truly changed? He touched the photograph on his desk, not his mother's now, but Emma's. "I won't make the same mistake twice," he promised quietly. The question remained whether she would give him the chance to prove it. Meanwhile, Emma's journey had taken her far from Manhattan, both geographically and emotionally. The upstate hospital position had offered exactly what she needed: distance from painful memories and immersion in meaningful work. The small-town setting provided simpler rhythms and genuine community connections that had been elusive in the city. Her apartment, modest but comfortable, became a sanctuary of independence, proof that she could build a life entirely her own. Yet Ethan's absence created a persistent ache that neither time nor distance fully resolved. She monitored his company's surprising transformation through industry news, noting the healthcare initiatives with professional interest and personal confusion. The man implementing these progressive programs bore little resemblance to the emotionally guarded billionaire she had left behind. "You still think about him," her colleague Meredith observed over coffee one morning in October, catching Emma studying a Business Journal article about Morgan Global's latest nurse support program. Emma closed the magazine with deliberate casualness. "I'm just interested in the program. It could benefit our nursing staff." "Mm-hmm," Meredith hummed skeptically. "That's why you've read that article 3 times." The observation hit uncomfortably close to truth. Despite her determination to move forward, Emma found herself tracking Ethan's evolution from afar, wondering about the catalyst for such dramatic changes. Had their separation somehow penetrated barriers she couldn't breach while present? Or was this simply corporate image rehabilitation orchestrated by PR professionals? The question lingered unresolved until a patient arrived from Manhattan with surprising connections. Max Winters, a 10-year-old with complex congenital heart issues, was transferred to their pediatric cardiology department for specialized care, unavailable at smaller facilities. His case file indicated a medical sponsor, the Elizabeth Morgan Foundation for Healthcare Access. Emma froze upon seeing the foundation name, immediately recognizing it as Ethan's mother's name. Curiosity overcame professional detachment, prompting her to investigate further. The foundation, she discovered, had been established 6 months earlier with a mission of providing comprehensive medical coverage for underserved children. Its founding documentation included a simple dedication: "For those who heal others at the expense of themselves." The words pierced Emma's carefully constructed defenses. This wasn't corporate strategy or image management. This was personal attribute that spoke volumes about Ethan's internal journey. Max's condition required intensive monitoring, bringing Emma into frequent contact with him during her shifts. The boy's resilience amid serious medical challenges reminded her powerfully of her own childhood battles with illness experiences that had ultimately inspired her nursing career. "You're my favorite," Max confided one evening as Emma checked his vitals. "The other nurses are nice, but you talk to me like I'm a person, not just a heart problem." The comment warmed her. "Because you are a person first. A pretty amazing one." "Mr. Morgan says the same thing when he visits. Max replied casually, adjusting his video game controller. He never talks about my heart stuff either, just normal things like basketball and movies. Emma's hand stilled on the blood pressure cuff. Mr. Morgan visits you. Yeah, every couple weeks. He's the one paying for everything, Max explained with childlike directness. Mom says without him, we'd have lost our house trying to cover the surgeries. He brings me books and talks about his mom who was sick when he was a kid. Each word increased Emma's disorientation. This version of Ethan making personal hospital visits, connecting with a child through shared experience, providing life-changing support without publicity, contradicted the emotionally unavailable man she'd left behind. He's coming tomorrow, Max added. You should meet him. I bet you'd like him. Emma's pulse quickened at the prospect of an unexpected encounter. I might have shift changes tomorrow, she deflected, unwilling to explain the complex reality. But I'll try to stop by. That night's sleep eluded her completely. The possibility of seeing Ethan again after nearly 6 months created emotional turbulence she hadn't anticipated. She had believed herself largely healed, moving forward with hard-earned wisdom. Now uncertainty resurged. Had he truly changed, or would meeting him reopen wounds barely scarred over? Morning brought no clarity, only increased nervous energy that accompanied her through hospital corridors. She adjusted her schedule to avoid Max's room during likely visiting hours, creating a buffer against accidental encounters. The strategy succeeded for most of her shift until a cardiac alarm from Max's room demanded immediate response. Emma rushed in professionalism, overriding personal concerns. The boy's oxygen levels had dropped dangerously, requiring rapid intervention. She focused entirely on stabilizing him, barely registering the tall figure who stepped back from the bedside to give her space. Only after the crisis passed and Max stabilized did she allow herself to acknowledge the presence she'd sensed. Turning slowly, she found herself face to face with Ethan Morgan for the first time in half a year. The sight of him delivered a physical impact she hadn't prepared for. He looked different, softer somehow, despite the familiar impeccable suit. New lines around his eyes suggested either increased stress or more frequent smiling. His posture lacked the rigid control she remembered, replaced by something more grounded, more present. Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by a complex sequence of emotions too rapid to catalog. Neither spoke immediately, the silence stretching between them, while medical equipment beeped steadily in the background. Max, drowsy from medication but alert enough to observe their reaction, broke the tension. You guys know each other? The question demanded response, forcing them past speechless shock. We're old friends. Emma managed professional composure, masking internal turmoil. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on her face, drinking in details as if memorizing them. Very old friends. The moment stretched laden with unspoken history until Max's mother returned from the cafeteria, creating a welcome diversion. Emma seized the opportunity to retreat, citing other patients requiring attention. Nurse Collins. Ethan's voice stopped her at the doorway, formal yet intimate. It's good to see you again. She nodded once, not trusting her voice with anything more substantial, then escaped into the relative safety of the busy corridor. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she leaned against the wall around the corner, processing the unexpected encounter. He looked well. More than well, he looked alive in ways she hadn't witnessed during their time together. The realization provoked conflicting emotions, gladness for his apparent growth alongside irrational hurt that it had occurred without her. For the remainder of her shift, Emma moved through duties with mechanical efficiency, hyper-aware of hospital entrances and exits, monitoring for Ethan's departure. When her supervisor approached with a request to cover an additional shift, she agreed immediately, grateful for legitimate reason to remain occupied. There's someone waiting for you in the staff lounge, a colleague mentioned as their shifts overlapped. Tall guy in an expensive suit, said he'd wait as long as necessary. Emma's stomach tightened. Did he give a name? Morgan, I think. Isn't that the guy funding half our new equipment? What's he want with you? Professional consultation. Emma improvised, mind racing through options. She could avoid the confrontation by leaving through service exits. She could send a message declining conversation. She could pretend urgent patient needs prevented meeting. All potential evasions felt suddenly childish, unworthy of the person she'd become during their separation. Whatever Ethan wanted to discuss, she could handle it with the strength she'd cultivated. Steeling herself, she completed her charting and headed toward the staff lounge. She found him standing by the window, staring out at the hospital parking lot illuminated by security lights. The setting sun cast long shadows across the pavement, painting the ordinary scene with unexpected beauty. He turned at the sound of the door, his expression carefully neutral, but eyes revealing complex emotions. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said quietly. Emma remained near the doorway, maintaining physical distance that mirrored her emotional caution. "Max is my patient. I assume this concerned his care." "It doesn't," Ethan admitted. "I'm here because, seeing you today after all this time—" He paused, seemingly searching for adequate words. "I couldn't leave without speaking to you properly." "We don't have anything to discuss, Ethan." "We have 6 months of silence to discuss," he countered gently. 6 months of changes and realizations. She crossed her arms, protective posture, unconscious but revealing. "Changes like your new healthcare initiatives, or your foundation for pediatric cases. Those are external manifestations of internal shifts," he replied. "The real changes wouldn't be visible on company reports or press releases." "What do you want from me?" The question emerged more vulnerable than she intended. His answer surprised her with its simplicity. "Nothing. I want for you whatever brings you fulfillment and happiness, whether or not that includes me." The statement hung between them, devoid of manipulation or expectation. Emma studied his expression, searching for a hidden agenda and finding none. "You've changed," she observed finally. "Yes," he agreed simply, though perhaps rediscovered would be more accurate than changed. "I've reconnected with parts of myself that were buried after my mother died, aspects I thought lost until you reminded me they existed." The reference to his mother triggered another question. "The foundation, it bears your mother's name." "Elizabeth Morgan Foundation," he confirmed, "established to help families like Max's and healthcare workers experiencing burnout, both causes she would have championed. And the nursing scholarship program at Metropolitan." His expression softened. "Named for you, though I should have consulted you first." Another lesson learned about respecting autonomy rather than making unilateral decisions. The acknowledgement of past mistakes delivered without defensiveness indicated genuine reflection rather than strategic concession. Emma felt her carefully constructed emotional walls wavering. "You seem different," she said finally. "Therapy twice weekly for 6 months will do that," he replied with unexpected openness. "Turns out decades of emotional suppression require significant professional intervention to address." The admission of vulnerability so contrary to the controlled man she'd known momentarily disarmed her. She searched for appropriate response and found none readily available. Ethan filled the silence, gesturing toward nearby chairs. "Could we sit? Just for a few minutes?" Hesitantly, she nodded, taking the seat furthest from him. The distance between them measured more than physical space. "I owe you an apology," he began, meeting her gaze directly. "Several, actually, but one supersedes the others. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you how I felt when it mattered most. I'm sorry I let you walk away believing you weren't deeply, completely loved." The declaration struck with unexpected force, momentarily robbing her of response. She had imagined this conversation countless times during sleepless nights, but reality defied all expectations. "Why now?" she finally asked. "Why could you say it now when you couldn't then?" He considered the question with evident care. "Because losing you forced me to confront what I feared most: emotional vulnerability. Because therapy helped me understand that my silence wasn't about lacking feelings, but about lacking vocabulary to express them. Because I've spent 6 months learning to articulate what I should have told you that night." "And what was that?" His gaze remained steady, though his voice softened. "That I loved you more than I believed possible. That you awakened something in me I thought had died with my mother. That you terrified me precisely because you mattered more than anyone since her." The past tense "love not love" created unexpected disappointment. Emma masked it with practical questions. "If that's true, why wait nearly half a year to tell me? Why not reach out sooner?" "I needed to become someone worthy of a second chance before asking for one," he replied. "Someone capable of genuine partnership rather than benevolent control. Someone who could offer emotional presence, not just material support." The answer reflected self-awareness she wouldn't have attributed to him before. "And you believe you've become that person?" I've made progress, he said without defensiveness. Significant progress according to my therapist. But ultimately, that judgment belongs to you, not me. His humility, so contrary to the confident CEO persona, stirred complicated feelings within her. She had constructed a life without him, rebuilt her independence, proven she could thrive alone. Yet sitting across from this evolved version of Ethan Morgan, she confronted the possibility that independence and connection weren't mutually exclusive. I have a good life now, she said, needing him to understand. Important work colleagues who respect me, patients who need me. I know, he replied, surprising her again. I never doubted you would create something meaningful wherever you went. That strength was always integral to who you are. Then why are you here? The question hung between them, demanding absolute honesty. Ethan leaned forward slightly, intensity breaking through his careful composure. Because despite everything, therapy work foundations, all of it, there remains an Emma-shaped void in my life that nothing else fills. Because I still love you, present tense, and probably always will, regardless of your decision today. The declaration, so different from his careful emotional distance before, rendered her momentarily speechless. Part of her wanted to embrace this transformed man immediately. Another part maintained protective skepticism, wary of reopening healing wounds. I need time, she said finally. This is unexpected. He nodded acceptance, replacing hope in his expression. Of course, take whatever time you need. I'll respect your decision either way. As he rose to leave, he reached into his pocket and removed a business card, not the embossed corporate version she remembered, but something simpler. He placed it on the table between them. My personal number, he explained. If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm available. No pressure, no expectations. The simple gesture communicated volumes about his transformation. The Ethan she had known would have orchestrated grand gestures, leveraged resources to influence outcomes. This man simply offered presence, then prepared to walk away without guarantees. She remained seated as he moved toward the door, emotional turmoil preventing immediate response. Only as his hand touched the handle did words finally emerge. Ethan, she called softly, how is Max's prognosis really? He turned surprise evident at the unexpected question. Challenging. He needs specialized surgery only available at Brigham and Women's in Boston. We're arranging transport next week. I'd like to follow his case, she said carefully. Professionally speaking. A small smile, genuine, not strategic, touched his lips. I think he'd appreciate that. He speaks highly of you. After Ethan's departure, Emma remained in the staff lounge, staring at the simple card bearing his number. The encounter had destabilized emotional equilibrium she thought firmly established. Questions circled relentlessly. Had he truly changed? Could she trust this evolution? Most importantly, could she risk her hard-won independence on the possibility of genuine connection with someone who had hurt her before? The questions accompanied her home that evening, persisting through sleepless hours and into following days. Work provided temporary distraction, but no resolution. Each time she checked on Max, memories of Ethan's transformed presence resurfaced, demanding reconsideration of assumptions she'd built during their separation. A week passed without contact. Emma maintained professional focus, but Ethan's card migrated from her locker to her wallet, physical manifestation of unresolved possibilities. She found herself researching the Elizabeth Morgan Foundation, discovering impressive scope and impact despite its recent establishment. Hospital colleagues occasionally mentioned Ethan's continued support of various departments, his genuine interest in healthcare worker conditions. He's nothing like what I expected from a billionaire. Her supervisor commented during a funding discussion for new equipment. He actually listens when nurses speak, asks meaningful questions about burnout prevention. Each new piece of information complicated Emma's emotional landscape, challenging the neat categories she had constructed. The Ethan she had left and the man described by colleagues seemed fundamentally different people. As Max's transfer to Boston approached, Emma found herself increasingly concerned about his journey. The boy had become special to her. His resilience amid serious illness, reminding her powerfully of her own childhood health struggles. When she learned the transport team lacked a pediatric specialist, professional concern overrode personal hesitation. I'd like to accompany Max to Boston, she requested during a staff meeting. I have pediatric critical care experience, and he responds well to me. The suggestion received immediate approval arrangements made efficiently through Foundation channels. Emma carefully avoided questioning whether Ethan might be involved with the Boston transfer, focusing instead on Max's medical needs. The morning of departure arrived crisp and clear autumn sunlight gilding landscape with golden light. Emma supervised Max's preparation for transport, ensuring comfort measures and medication timing optimized his stability during the journey. The medical helicopter waited on the rooftop pad crew, completing final checks when unexpected footsteps sounded behind her. "I didn't know you were coming." She turned to find Ethan approaching casual in jeans and sweater rather than his typical business attire. The informal clothing accentuated a physicality typically disguised by tailored suits. "Max is my patient," she replied, professional mask firmly in place. "He needs specialized attention during transport." Ethan nodded, keeping respectful distance. "He'll be glad to have you there. He talks about you constantly." Awkward silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions. Emma busied herself checking Max's monitoring equipment, avoiding direct eye contact. "I'm not accompanying you to Boston," Ethan said suddenly, correctly interpreting her unasked question. "I just came to see Max off and wish him luck. I'll visit next week after he's settled." Relief mingled with unexpected disappointment at his clarification. "That's thoughtful of you." "He's a special kid," Ethan replied simply. "Reminds me of myself at that age, minus the courage." The transport team signaled readiness, ending their brief exchange. As Emma prepared to board with Max's stretcher, Ethan's voice reached her once more. "Emma," he called softly, "safe journey." The simplicity of his concern, offered without expectations or manipulation, accompanied her through the flight to Boston, creating unexpected emotional resonance amid medical responsibilities. Brigham and Women's Hospital welcomed them with exemplary efficiency, transitioning Max smoothly to their pediatric cardiac unit. Emma remained overnight, ensuring his stability before preparing to return to New York. As she completed transfer documentation, a senior cardiologist approached with unexpected proposition. "Nurse Collins, your handling of Max's case was impressive," the doctor began. "We're currently seeking someone with your qualifications for our pediatric cardiac team. The Elizabeth Morgan Foundation has established a fellowship specifically for nurses with your background. Would you consider applying?" The offer caught her completely off guard. "A fellowship here in Boston. Fully funded, including housing allowance and research opportunities," the doctor confirmed. "Quite prestigious, actually. We've had numerous applicants, but your experience with complex pediatric cases is particularly relevant." Emma's mind raced with implications. Had Ethan orchestrated this opportunity? Was this elaborate manipulation disguised as professional development, or genuine recognition of her qualifications independent of personal history? "I'd need time to consider," she managed professional demeanor, masking internal conflict. "Of course," the doctor nodded. "The foundation representative mentioned you might need convincing. Said to tell you explicitly that acceptance or rejection would have zero personal implications. The opportunity exists regardless of any past or future connections." The message, clearly from Ethan, simultaneously reassured and unsettled her. He had anticipated her concerns about manipulation, yet created extraordinary opportunity aligned perfectly with her professional interests. The complexity of emotions this generated accompanied her throughout the return journey to New York. Back at her apartment that evening, Emma found herself at a crossroads, both professional and personal. The Boston Fellowship represented career advancement beyond her expectations, specialized training at a prestigious institution, research opportunities, significant impact on pediatric cardiac care. Yet accepting meant acknowledging connection to the foundation, bearing Ethan's mother's name, indirect linkage to the man himself. Her fingers traced the edges of his business card, considering possibilities from multiple angles. Professional advancement without personal entanglement, complete separation from both opportunity and man, or exploration of both professional growth and personal reconciliation. After hours of deliberation, she reached for her phone and dialed the number she'd been carrying for weeks. He answered immediately, voice careful but hopeful. "Emma, did you create that fellowship specifically for me?" Direct question, no preamble. A pause, then honesty. "I established funding for pediatric cardiac nursing advancement. Your qualifications made you a natural candidate, but the selection committee operates independently. I have no influence over their decisions." But you knew I'd be qualified. Yes, he admitted, though I expected you'd be suspicious of my involvement. That's why I specifically instructed them to emphasize the separation between professional opportunity and personal history. His transparency disarmed her practiced defenses. Why create these opportunities at all? The foundation, the scholarships, all of it. Initially, because losing you forced me to evaluate what actually matters, he answered with unexpected candor. I wanted to build something meaningful from the ruins of my mistakes, something that would honor both my mother's memory and the values you championed. And now they've become extensions of who I am, not just memorials to what I've lost. These programs would continue regardless of your decision about us because they're independently valuable. The distinction proved crucial evidence of authentic growth rather than elaborate strategy to win her back. Emma found herself believing him despite lingering caution. I'm considering the fellowship, she said finally. I think you'd excel there, he replied, careful not to presume or pressure. Your experience with pediatric cardiac cases is exceptional. Silence stretched between them, weighted with unspoken questions. Would you like to discuss it further? He asked eventually. Perhaps over coffee? The invitation hung in digital space between them, casual on surface, monumental in implication. Not a grand romantic gesture, but small step toward possible reconciliation. Coffee, she agreed cautiously. Tomorrow afternoon. Name the place, he replied, hope audible beneath measured response. There's a small cafe near the hospital, Sullivan's on Maple Street, 3 o'clock. I'll be there, he promised. And Emma, thank you for calling. The connection ended, leaving her with complex anticipation rather than resolution. She had agreed only to conversation, not reconciliation. Yet something fundamental had shifted within her willingness to explore possibilities previously rejected outright. The following afternoon arrived with unexpected nervousness, reminiscent of first dates rather than reunion with someone intimately known. Emma selected her outfit with uncharacteristic attention, ultimately choosing casual elegance that suggested neither excessive effort nor indifference. The small cafe offered neutral territory, public enough for safety, quiet enough for substantive conversation. She arrived intentionally early, selecting corner table with good sightlines to the entrance. The proprietor, recognizing her from previous visits, delivered her usual tea without prompting. Emma arranged her thoughts carefully, uncertain what expectations to maintain for the upcoming conversation. Precisely at 3, Ethan entered punctual as always, though visibly different from the controlled executive she had known. His clothing, while still quality, lacked previous rigid formality. His movement through the space seemed more grounded, present, rather than calculating. He spotted her immediately approaching with measured steps that suggested respect for her personal boundaries. Thank you for meeting me, he said, taking the seat opposite without presuming physical contact. She nodded, studying him with newfound perspective. I wanted to hear more about the fellowship without hospital interruptions. He accepted the professional framing without question. What specifically would you like to know? The conversation began with safe territory, fellowship structure, research opportunities, expectations of participants. Ethan answered with comprehensive knowledge but careful neutrality, neither encouraging nor discouraging her potential application. The professional discussion gradually relaxed into more personal territory. How is Max settling in at Brigham and Women's? She inquired, genuine concern evident. Remarkably well, Ethan replied, subtle animation entering his expression. His spirit remains undiminished despite the challenges. The surgical team is optimistic about outcomes. You've become quite invested in his case, she observed. A slight smile touched his features. He reminds me of possibilities I'd forgotten existed. Courage without cynicism. The comment revealed emotional perception previously absent in their interactions. Emma found herself curious about other changes 6 months had wrought. Tell me about the therapy, she said, surprising herself with direct inquiry into territory previously avoided. If the question startled him, he managed it gracefully. Twice weekly for half a year now. Initially just desperate attempt to understand why I froze when you needed words from me. Eventually much more excavation of emotional patterns established during childhood. Recognition of defense mechanisms, gradual development of emotional vocabulary. Has it helped? His gaze held steady, direct without being challenging. Immeasurably, though the true measure would be whether I could speak my feelings now in moments that matter, rather than retreating behind walls. The implicit question hung between them and acknowledged but not yet tested. Emma shifted conversation towards safer territory. The foundation seems to be making significant impact already. He nodded, accepting the redirection. More than anticipated, honestly. Healthcare workers respond differently when initiatives come from someone who understands their challenges from personal connection. Your mother, she acknowledged softly. And you, he added simply, everything I've learned about healthcare worker needs came initially through your eyes. The programs simply expand on patterns you helped me recognize. The attribution surprised her, underscoring his willingness to acknowledge her influence without claiming it served ulterior motives. Throughout the conversation, Emma found herself continually reassessing the man before her, finding consistency between words and actions that suggested genuine transformation rather than strategic performance. Coffee extended to early dinner conversation, flowing with increasing ease as professional distance gradually yielded to personal reconnection. Ethan spoke of his ongoing therapy without defensiveness, his mother's memory without pain, his business transformation without corporate jargon. Emma shared her experiences upstate, her professional growth, her continued passion for underserved patients. As evening approached, neither seemed eager to conclude their reunion. They walked from the restaurant through a nearby park, autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet, conversation continuing with natural rhythm. I've missed this, Ethan admitted as they paused near a small pond reflecting sunset colors. Just talking with you, being myself without calculation or performance. The simple honesty resonated with Emma's own experience. I've missed certain aspects too, she acknowledged cautiously. Only certain aspects. A hint of their old teasing emerged, warming the space between them. The good coffee you always had delivered to the hospital, she replied with slight smile. The heated bathroom floors, the view from your terrace. All replaceable amenities, he noted. Nothing irreplaceable. The question invited deeper honesty, testing waters of potential reconciliation. Emma considered her response carefully, balancing hard-earned independence against lingering connection. The way you listened, she admitted finally, really listened without preparing responses or checking phones or thinking about other things. That quality is surprisingly rare. He absorbed her words with evident attention, embodying the very quality she described. I'm still listening, he said softly, to whatever you're willing to share. The statement opened space for vulnerability without demanding it invitation rather than expectation. Emma found herself standing at emotional threshold, uncertain whether crossing served healing or potential new injury. I built a good life after leaving, she said, needing him to understand. Proved to myself I didn't need anyone to survive or thrive. That independence matters to me. As it should, he affirmed immediately. I would never want you to be anything less than fully yourself with or without me in the picture. But, she prompted, sensing unspoken continuation. His gaze remained steady, honest without manipulation. But I've learned that independence and connection aren't mutually exclusive. That the strongest relationships involve two complete people choosing each other, not needing each other to be complete. The distinction, articulated with precision therapy, had clearly helped develop, resonated powerfully with Emma's own evolving perspective. She had indeed built independent strength during their separation, but that strength need not preclude connection if properly respected. The fellowship in Boston, she said, shifting direction slightly. If I accepted, would you expect? I would expect nothing, he interrupted gently. The opportunity exists independently of any personal relationship. Accept it because it advances your career and passion, not because of any connection to me. And if I wanted that connection, hypothetically speaking, something kindled in his expression, hope carefully contained by respect for her autonomy. Then I would consider myself fortunate beyond measure, but still maintain boundaries between professional opportunity and personal relationship. Your career advancement would never be contingent on us. The answer reflected exactly the distinction she needed to hear: professional respect separate from personal connection, both valued in their own domains. I need to think, she said finally, about the fellowship, about other possibilities. He nodded, accepting her time frame without pressuring for resolution. Take whatever time you need. I'll be here regardless of your decision. As they prepared to part ways, Ethan hesitated momentarily. There is something I need to say before you go. Something I should have said 6 months ago. Emma braced herself, uncertain what revelation might follow. I love you, he said simply, voice steady and clear. Not because you remind me of my mother, or because you need saving, or for any reason except who you fundamentally are. I love your compassion, your strength, your integrity. I love how you fight for patients others might overlook. I love your independence, even when it takes you away from me. The declaration, delivered without expectation or manipulation, struck Emma with unexpected force. This wasn't calculated strategy or desperate plea, but authentic expression from someone who had done significant work to develop emotional articulacy. I don't expect those words to change your decision, he continued gently. I just needed you to hear them once clearly, without ambiguity or conditions. Whatever you decide about the fellowship or us, please know that much is true. They parted with tentative handshake rather than embrace physical restraint, honoring emotional boundaries still being negotiated. Emma returned to her apartment with mind spinning between professional opportunity and personal possibility. The fellowship represented career advancement beyond her current trajectory. Boston offered fresh environment, specialized training, significant impact potential. Yet accepting meant geographical proximity to Ethan, inevitable continued connection through foundation activities. Would proximity reignite connection worth nurturing, or simply reopen wounds better left healed, separately? The questions accompanied her through restless night and into following days as the application deadline approached. After thorough consideration balancing professional growth against personal caution, Emma submitted her fellowship application, accompanied by detailed curriculum vitae and professional recommendations. The process itself provided structure amid emotional uncertainty, concrete steps, while larger questions remained unresolved. 2 weeks later, official acceptance arrived, the fellowship committee unanimously impressed by her qualifications and experience. The accompanying materials included housing options, orientation schedule, and welcome packet describing Boston's medical community. Professional path clarified while personal questions lingered. Emma contacted Ethan with the news, maintaining careful neutrality. I've been accepted to the fellowship program. I start next month. His response matched her tone, pleased without presumption. Congratulations. They're fortunate to have someone with your expertise. Thank you for creating the opportunity. She acknowledged professional gratitude distinct from personal implication. The opportunity exists because dedicated people like you deserve career advancement. He countered gently. Your acceptance comes from merit, not connection. The distinction mattered enormously, recognition of her professional value independent of personal history. Emma found herself increasingly certain she had made right decision professionally, while personal questions remained deliberately unresolved. I'm moving to Boston next week, she informed him. Early orientation before the official program begins. Would you like recommendations for neighborhoods or assistance with logistics? He offered, careful to maintain boundaries while providing practical support if needed. I've arranged housing through the program, she replied, appreciating his restraint. But thank you for offering. Silence stretched momentarily across digital connection, weighted with unspoken questions about personal implications of her relocation. Emma, he said finally, voice gentling, I meant what I said about expectations. Your move to Boston doesn't create obligations between us. Professional opportunity remains separate from personal possibilities. The reassurance offered without prompting eased lingering concern about entanglement between career advancement and relationship dynamics. Ethan continued, demonstrating understanding of boundaries she needed respected. I appreciate that clarity, she replied honestly. I'm still processing possibilities. Take whatever time you need, he said simply. I'll be here if you're ready to explore them. The conversation ended with tentative plans to meet in Boston after her relocation casual coffee without pressure or expectation. Emma approached the potential meeting with cautious optimism, recognizing genuine changes in both herself and Ethan during their separation. Her move to Boston unfolded smoothly. Foundation arranged housing exceeding expectations in both location and amenities. The medical center welcomed her with professional respect. Her qualifications had earned orientation, introducing colleagues who shared her passion for pediatric cardiac care. Within days, she established comfortable routine balancing clinical responsibilities with research opportunities. 2 weeks into her fellowship, Emma suggested meeting with Ethan at neutral location coffee shop near the hospital rather than either personal space. He arrived exactly on time, casual elegance, replacing corporate formality, respecting her boundaries while clearly pleased by her invitation. Their conversation flowed naturally professional developments, Max's improving condition, Boston's medical community. Gradually, discussion shifted toward personal territory testing, waters of potential reconnection. I've been thinking about what you said, Emma ventured during momentary lull, about independence and connection not being mutually exclusive. He nodded, attention focused completely on her words without pushing for conclusions. I've worked hard to build independence this past year, she continued carefully, to prove I can stand completely on my own. That matters to me, not needing anyone to survive or succeed. As it should, I don't know, he affirmed immediately. But I'm beginning to understand that choosing connection from position of strength differs fundamentally from seeking it from position of need, she admitted. That perhaps the strongest relationships form between two whole people who want rather than need each other. Hope flickered in his expression, carefully contained to avoid presumption. That's been my experience in therapy as well, learning that genuine connection requires two complete individuals choosing each other repeatedly, not filling gaps in each other's wholeness. The alignment in their evolving perspectives created bridge across previous disconnect. Emma studied him thoughtfully, noting subtle but significant changes indicating authentic growth rather than strategic performance. I'd like to explore that possibility, she said finally, slowly with appropriate boundaries. See if what exists between us now differs from what existed before. The careful invitation, neither commitment nor rejection, visibly affected him. Emotion crossed his features, controlled but evident in momentary brightness of his eyes. I would like that very much, he replied simply, at whatever pace feels right to you. They established tentative parameters, regular coffee meetings, occasional shared meals, professional boundaries maintained at foundation events. Physical connection remained deliberately limited, emotional reconnection prioritized through substantive conversation. Ethan respected her autonomy completely, never presuming or pushing beyond established boundaries. Weeks passed in this careful dance of rediscovery. Emma observed Ethan's transformation with increasing certainty of its authenticity, consistent emotional articulation replacing previous guardedness, genuine interest in her perspective without controlling tendencies, respect for her independence without withdrawal. Each interaction reinforced evidence of fundamental change in emotional patterns therapy had helped him recognize and address. Their reconnection progressed organically through autumn and into early winter. Boston's first snowfall arrived unexpectedly one evening as they finished dinner at neighborhood restaurant. Large flakes drifted lazily from darkened sky, transforming cityscape with quiet beauty, reminiscent of their first meeting. Walk with me, Ethan suggested as they exited the restaurant. The common should be beautiful in the snow. They strolled through steadily accumulating white conversation flowing easily between professional developments and personal reflections. Near the center of the park, they paused beside small pond, just beginning to freeze around its edges. Snowflakes caught in Emma's hair, like miniature stars against golden background. It was snowing the night we met, Ethan observed quietly, though much more severely than this. I remember, she acknowledged. I was freezing at that bus stop, certain I'd be stuck there all night. I nearly drove past, he admitted. Then something made me stop, something beyond the scrubs or any resemblance to my mother. Something about your determination even in desperate circumstances. Emma studied him in the gentle illumination of park lamps filtering through falling snow. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want you to know I see you fully, he replied with quiet intensity. Not as reflection of someone else or project to fix, but as yourself, complex, complete, extraordinary, woe in your own right. The declaration, delivered without expectation or manipulation, resonated deeply, addressing core insecurity their previous relationship had never resolved. Emma felt something shift within her, final barrier lowering between past wounds and future possibilities. I think, she said carefully, that I'd like you to kiss me now. His expression registered surprise followed by cautious hope. Are you certain? She nodded, closing distance between them with deliberate step. Completely certain. Their lips met gently amid falling snow, reconnection, rather than new beginning, homecoming, rather than exploration. When they separated, matching smiles reflected recognition of threshold crossed from healing into new creation. I love you, Ethan said softly, words once impossible now flowing naturally. Not because I need you to complete me, but because loving you makes me more fully myself. Emma touched his face gently, wonder replacing caution. I love you too, not despite your flaws or because of your changes, but because of who you fundamentally are, who you've always been beneath the armor. The declaration sealed transformation, months in making, not erasing past difficulties, but incorporating them into stronger foundation. They walked hand in hand through snowy landscape, discussing future possibilities with newfound confidence in shared journey. As they reached the edge of the common snowfall intensifying around them, Emma paused to look up at the winter sky. Full circle, she observed, smiling at meteorological echo of their first meeting. From storm to storm, Ethan's arm encircled her waist, presence solid without being confining. The difference being, we no longer fear the storm. Because we've weathered worse together, she agreed, leaning comfortably against him. And because sometimes, he added softly, pressing kiss to her temple, the people who save us arrive wrapped in quiet kindness, midnight ramen in a hand held through darkness. The observation, both acknowledgement of past and promise for future completed transformation, begun on snowy night at abandoned bus stop where two broken people had unknowingly begun journey toward healing each other through first being healed themselves. Around them, the snow continued falling, no longer threat, but benediction. Silent witness to truth, they had both finally learned that love neither rescues nor completes, but rather accompanies and enhances journey. Each must ultimately travel alone, yet chose to share together.